A British family sedan once helped build an automotive empire in another country, and most people have no idea. The car, the Morris Oxford MO, not a Ferrari, not a Mustang, not some V12 monster that drinks fuel like it's tea time in London. A simple four-door saloon from post-war Britain quietly became one of the most influential cars of the 20th century. And the wild part? Its biggest success story didn't even happen in the UK. Today, we're uncovering the shocking truth about the Morris Oxford MO. How it rose from the ashes of World War II, how it secretly reshaped transportation in parts of the world, and how its engineering decisions led to something even more unexpected. Something that will completely change the way you see this ordinary car. And if you love uncovering hidden automotive legends like this, smash that subscribe button like you're closing the heavy steel door of a 1940s British sedan, solid, satisfying, and built to last. Now, let's get into the real story. Because the Morris Oxford MO wasn't just a car. It was a turning point. The Morris Oxford MO debuted in 1948, just as Britain was trying to rebuild after World War II. Resources were limited, steel was rationed, fuel was expensive. The country didn't need flashy cars, it needed reliable transportation. Under the leadership of industrialist William Morris, founder of Morris Motors, the Oxford MO was designed to be practical, durable, and easy to maintain.
It featured a 1.5-litre side-valve four-cylinder engine producing around 41 horsepower. That doesn't sound exciting today. But back then, it was smooth, dependable, and capable of cruising at about 70 mph, which was more than enough for Britain's narrow roads. But here's the interesting part. While other manufacturers were experimenting with bold new shapes and flashy features, the Oxford MO went for conservative styling. Rounded fenders, modest chrome, upright grille. It looked calm, respectable, almost too safe. And that conservative approach would lead to something far bigger than anyone expected. Something that would travel thousands of miles from British soil. Now here's where things get fascinating. The Morris Oxford MO was built on a sturdy chassis with leaf spring suspension and rear-wheel drive. It wasn't cutting edge, but it was incredibly durable. This car could handle rough roads, inconsistent maintenance, and long-distance driving without complaining. That reliability became its secret weapon. The engine was simple, no complicated overhead cams, no exotic materials, just solid engineering that any competent mechanic could fix with basic tools. And in the late 1940s and early 1950s, that mattered more than performance. Even the interior reflected that philosophy. Wide bench seats, straightforward gauges, and room for 5 adults. It was a family car in the truest sense. The kind of car that carried groceries, children, luggage, and occasionally a very stubborn suitcase that refused to fit in the boot.
But this durability wasn't just helpful in Britain. It was about to make the Morris Oxford MO the foundation of something much, much bigger, and not under the Morris name. Here's the twist most people don't know. The Morris Oxford platform became the basis for one of the most iconic cars in India, the Hindustan Ambassador. Yes, the humble Oxford design travelled to India, where Hindustan Motors began producing a version of the car in the 1950s. And while the Oxford MO itself evolved into later versions in the UK, the core design lived on in India for decades. Decades. The Ambassador became the official car of politicians, government officials, taxi drivers, and families across the country. It was affectionately nicknamed the King of Indian Roads. Think about that for a second. A British post-war sedan design ended up shaping mobility in a completely different nation for generations. That's not just influence, that's legacy. And it gets even more surprising when you look at how long that legacy lasted. The original Oxford MO only ran from 1948 to 1954. Not an unusually long lifespan for a car model, but the DNA of that car. It survived for over half a century in various forms. The Ambassador, based on later Oxford designs but rooted in the same engineering philosophy, remained in production until 2014. Let that sink in. A design concept that began in the late 1940s was still rolling off production lines in the 21st century. That's longer than many modern car brands have even existed. And while critics called it outdated, drivers appreciated its roomy interior, soft suspension, and ability to survive rough roads that would make modern low-profile tyres cry for help. But here's the part people often overlook. This longevity wasn't just about stubborn tradition. It was about strategic simplicity, something most modern automakers have almost forgotten. Today's cars are technological masterpieces: touchscreens, driver assistance systems, lane keeping, adaptive cruise, wireless updates. Meanwhile, the Morris Oxford MO offered a steering wheel, pedals, and an engine that started if you treated it nicely. And yet, that simplicity was powerful. Fewer electronics meant fewer things to fail. Straightforward mechanical systems meant lower repair costs. In developing markets especially, that was priceless. The Oxford MO proved that innovation isn't always about adding more. Sometimes it's about refining what works. And here's where it becomes almost ironic. While many people laugh at older cars for being basic, collectors today are rediscovering the charm of analog driving, the heavy steering, the mechanical feedback, the connection between driver and machine. The Oxford MO wasn't flashy, but it was honest, and that honesty is becoming rare.
But there's one more surprising truth about this car, something that even many car enthusiasts don't fully appreciate. The Morris Oxford MO wasn't just transportation, it was economic infrastructure. In post-war Britain, affordable cars helped families commute, businesses operate, and goods move efficiently. It contributed to economic rebuilding during a critical period. In India, its successor became a backbone of public transport. Taxi fleets relied on it. Government agencies trusted it. It became a symbol of authority and reliability. When you see old photos of Indian city streets from the 1970s or 1980s, rows of ambassadors dominate the scene. That visual identity traces back to the Oxford's engineering roots. Few cars can claim that level of cultural and economic impact. And the funny thing, most people today would walk past a Morris Oxford MO at a car show without a second glance. Meanwhile, its design quietly shaped millions of lives. That's the real shock. So why should you care about a modest British sedan from 1948? Because the Morris Oxford MO represents something modern automotive culture often overlooks: purpose-driven design.
It wasn't built to win drag races. It wasn't built to dominate headlines. It was built to serve people. In a world obsessed with horsepower figures and 0-60 times, the Oxford MO reminds us that influence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's steady, dependable, and quietly transformative. And here's a little humour for you. If the Oxford MO had social media, it wouldn't be posting flashy burnout videos. It would be posting "drove 200,000 miles today, still running, tea break now." But jokes aside, its impact across continents proves that greatness doesn't always wear a sports badge. The Morris Oxford MO started as a practical solution to a country rebuilding after war. It became the foundation of a cultural icon in another nation. It demonstrated that durability and simplicity can outlast trends, technology, and even entire automotive eras. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't revolutionary in the dramatic sense, but it was quietly transformative. And sometimes the cars that change the world aren't the ones making the most noise. They're the ones steadily moving people forward, day after day, year after year. That's the story of the Morris Oxford MO. And now you'll never see it as just an old car again.